Hello. Welcome to a new series on my channel called It's More Fun to Compute. Today we're going to look at QB64 and we're going to look specifically at it and how it can be used in a modern editor ecosystem like VS Code. So first of all, these are two separate topics. We have, on the one hand, we have basic and QB64, which QB64, we're going to go through what all that is, but QB64 is a basic project which maintains compatibility with the old DOS basics. That's the gist of it. It is very compatible and a lot of stuff is available for it. It's really cool, but it takes it further as well. It takes basic into the modern era because what you get is the old way, right, with old basic in quick basic and in stuff like that, but you also get new school stuff. So behind the scenes, it's doing a whole bunch of things and it's using C to output the code. So it's very fast. So it's like a very fast language, even though it's written in basic. So you can put all of that baggage away where you might say, okay, basic isn't for me because it's too slow. Well, that's not true. And we're going to go through that. The other thing is you're going to have people who might not even know that this is available. So I'm going to go through the QB64 kind of 101 on this hand. And then on this hand, we're going to have Visual Studio Code. And Visual Studio Code is the more contemporary modern ecosystem for development of any language. And the way that it's architected and built, we can take advantage of what it offers in all of the momentum and learning from the computing community and leverage that for QB64. There are some caveats. QB64 has a IDE, it has a built-in debugger, it has a compiler, the compiler we're going to use in QB64 or in VS Code, sorry. But it also has online help system. And it's like a more in the can kind of setup. VS Code does not have an inline debugger yet. We are trying to get to that point. And when I say we, I mean the QB64 people, the nerds behind the scenes are going to get to that point. We're working on it. Actually, we is more about one person. And this one guy, I want to make sure that he gets all of the credit that he deserves. His avatar name, nickname, handle, call sign, whatever you want to call it, is Durus. And he has been leading the charge in getting this VS Code extension out to all of the QB64 programmers. So now that that's said, let's go ahead and go through what QB64 is, what VS Code is, how to configure it, how to set it up, how to install it, and how to use it. Before we can understand how to do these things, let's go through and just make sure we're all on the same page. So here is an Xmind mind map, and Xmind is a free program. You can download it. It's at xmind.net. I love this program because it helps me think. It helps me organize my thought process. And all that we're seeing here was created in Xmind. This is a custom theme. Doesn't matter. The point I'm making here is that these are the topics we're going to discuss in this video. First, we're going to look at what this whole VS Code QB64 extension is about, who made it, where you can get it, and the theme behind and the spirit behind its development. We're also going to look at important URLs that you're going to need to install QB64 because you need that. You're also going to need VS Code, so we'll provide those things. And then also, we're going to give you the repo URLs for GitHub so that you can clone things like the extension repo and download it and get it into your VS Code. But before we can do those things and before you can download and install things, we have to go over some prerequisites, and then we will fly by VS Code 101, and we'll also fly by QB64 101. And these will be very basic, high-level overviews of what it is and what each thing is. So on the one hand, as I mentioned, we're going to have QB64. We're going to learn about that really in a very, very fast way. And we're going to do the same for VS Code 101. The difference is on VS Code 101, we're going to make sure that all of the things that you need to know to be successful with your use of QB64 for VS Code extension are included. We're also going to install VS Code. We're going to install QB64. We're going to go over a couple different housekeeping items, which are unfortunately relevant at this time, which includes different versions of QB64 that you can download. And then we're going to prepare our VS Code for QB64 use. We're going to install the extension in VS Code. We're going to configure it, and then we're going to use it. And I'm going to walk through each of these sections in turn. Right. So let's get on with it. So looking at our mind map here, we have to look at the About section first. So the lead developer of this effort is Durus, and he is, without a doubt, the main programmer, the main contributor of bringing this VS Code extension to life. So thank you very much, Durus. We are definitely in your debt, and it's been a lot of fun working with you as a contributor on this project. In addition to Durus, we have Dual Brain, who is helping with some of the documentation efforts and testing. We've got Brick Viking, who is doing some testing and scripting for Linux environments. And we have me, who has been helping just kind of participate with testing on Windows and Mac, and doing a little bit of design and just kind of bouncing some ideas around, and a lot of testing. And then we have a bunch of other folks who aren't in here, but this right now is kind of like the main group of people who are working on this. That said, this is just how it is now. And since it's, open source and it's on GitHub, anyone can participate and contribute. That said, I want to make this clear. This VS Code extension is in a beta format. It is not available on the VS Code marketplace. So what we have to do is manually install this extension after we clone the repo, and we're going to do that inside of the VS Code program itself using a menu option to do so. So the important URLs are the following. We have GitHub repos that are necessary for you to have in order to install the plugin. This is where the plugin lives. It's QB64 official/VS Code. I'll put these in as hyperlinks in the description as well, but I just put in the name of the GitHub user here / the repo name. You could just find it that way as well if you just type it in, if for some reason you don't have the ability to copy and paste or click on the description link. There is also the official QB64 project. Now, I'm going to short circuit a little bit and go over here and talk about this out of order. So something happened with the QB64 community, and there was a change of leadership and a change of direction based on some negative things that happened. I don't want to talk about that. Doesn't matter. What I wanted to say, though, is that there's an official QB64 as a result of this, and there's a 64 or QB64.com domain, which is what lends its officiality to that side of it. Also, it's going to be a slower, more stable kind of development, whereas there's also a PE or Phoenix edition, and Phoenix is a bird of mythos that rises from the ashes and is born again. And in this specific project, which is a fork of the original, so is the official, like they both kind of split. This is going to have more new features and is going to be more actively developed. Now, I'm not making a political stand about which you want to use. It's up to you. But the way that I like to think about this is that the official is like stable, more LTS style. And the PE is more of the bleeding edge kind of, I want to see things evolve. I'm less concerned about maintaining a status quo, and I'm more about innovation and things of that nature. Now, that's just my perception, but that had to be said. Now, there's different people who are leading the charges on these things, and I'm not going to talk about that. I'll leave that up to you to see. But TLDR on the official side, Dual Brain has a domain for QB64.com, and he's done a lot of work to preserve the QB64 official kind of integrity of everything. And then there's also the Phoenix Edition folks, who is led by, I guess, Steve McNeil, who is a really talented developer and had a lot of active development before the split. So that's why there are two kind of branches here that you can take. So, and then there's two separate wikis. There's the official one, which is actually hosted on GitHub. And this GitHub wiki includes all of the things that you might, need from a wiki for a programming language. It has, references and FAQs and all of that kind of thing, some samples. And the same is true of the PE wiki. And these are largely similar. And there's people who are working on these wikis behind the scenes, one of which is Paul Astro, who's been awesome. Brick Viking's been also doing that on the official side. I'm not sure who's doing that on the PE side, because I just recently kind of joined up and talked to those folks on that Discord. So the original forum is being preserved right now by this URL, and the original forum is before the RC Cola incident. So what that means is RC Cola was a guy who had taken over, and then something happened. I'm not going to talk about it. Then we have two forums. The official forum here, which is a younger forum. It's got, it's just getting its legs under it. But this is specifically targeted at the official kind of branch of development. And then the PE forum has a lot more activity and a lot more people doing stuff on it at this time. And that is located here. I mentioned there are several Discords. So we have the QB official Discord and the QB64 Phoenix Edition Discord. I will put these links in the description, but Discord is just a place you can hang out and talk about programming, in this case, retro computing, and make friends and so on. So those are the important URLs. The ones that you want to use right now are right here. They're outlined with this pink color. And the ones, in my opinion, that are important for you to understand and at least take a look at are also outlined there. Okay, let's tuck that away. Now let's talk about some prerequisites. First, you need to download VSCode. To get that, you're going to go to a URL online, or you could just put download VSCode into Google and you'll be able to find it. VSCode is available for Windows, obviously, because it's a Microsoft product. It's also available for Linux natively, and it's also available for Mac. All of them have parity with each other. There are idiosyncrasies and specific caveats and differences amongst them, but largely they're all very similar, very the same. You're not going to be disoriented if you go from one platform to another. Additional to that, you can also use VS Code right in your browser. In GitHub, if you just press the dot key, whenever you are looking at anything in GitHub that's a commit or a file, it will open VS Code for you right on the web. It's a very minimal experience, but it's possible to do. Now, QB64 is a little more unknown, but I will provide URLs for that as well, and I'll show you a walkthrough of where to get it and so on. But just know that both of these versions, the official QB64 and the PE edition, work with the extension in the same way. The path that you'll use when you configure stuff will obviously be different depending on where you install it, but they're both backwards compatible because the extension, or forwards compatible, the extension itself only calls the compiler, right? So, excuse me, there's no differences there besides what's in the language. Where you get VS Code, just type VS Code in your browser, and then you're going to go right here to download. And then from here, you can just pick which one you want. Now, for this video, I'm not going to go through all these steps. It's very, very easy. On each of these platforms, it's literally like you would expect it to be. The native installation experience is great on each platform. You can see It's got large support for Linux, as well as this will work in a special way with Windows subsystem for Linux. And I'll go through that maybe in another It's More Fun to Compute video. Now, where do we get QB64? So if you just put in QB64 in Google, you're going to see the first thing that comes up is the official version of QB64. So if we click on this, this is where you can download and learn more. TLDR though, everything is available for you right here. You don't have to go to GitHub if you don't want to. You can literally just click here and it will take you to, as you can see down here in the status bar, the release page. So let's go ahead though and go on to GitHub, because I want you to be able to do this for future releases as well, in case they haven't been updated on the site. So you see on the right side, first, this is the GitHub user, and then this is the repository. And you can see this is forked from Galleon Dragon's QB64 repo. Okay, so if we click on releases here, you will see that this information tells you what's available and so on. And you can see it's downloadable for Windows, for Linux, and for Mac. And if you click on this guy down here, you will see the available downloads in other ways. So just go ahead and pick one, and then I will see you in the next step. Okay, so we are now going to look at the specific ways in which you install QB64. And I'm going to use the official repo here. I'll go through the PE one as well. They are slightly different. But basically, you just can figure this out by going to the QB64 URL and the repo, and then scrolling down, and you'll see there's installation instructions. Real easy. So you just pick one of these. So we want to install on Windows. So let's see. Windows, make sure to extract the package to a folder with full write permissions. Failing to do so may result in IDE or compilation errors. It is advisable to whitelist the QB64 in your antivirus, anti-malware software. And that's true. So you're going to want to do that on Windows for sure. Now on Mac, you need to make sure that you have the command line tools from Xcode installed, which you can do through this command right here from a terminal. And then once you've downloaded QB64 Mac version, you're going to either unpack it or clone the repo or whatever you're doing, but you're going to run this command, and then that's going to compile your QB64 on your Mac using CLang or whatever it is that Mac OS has set up in its build tools there. And the same is true with Linux, except for it's just one script here. And you can see dependencies should be automatically installed, and the required packages are OpenGL, ALSA, and GNU C++ compiler. After that, it's just QB64 right here from the binary directory where you've installed it, and then you can see all of these things. You can also get help by doing -H and so on. Now, let's look at QB64PE. So, the difference here, as I mentioned, is this repo is a rebirth of and an extension of the status quo that exists now. But you can see everything is the same here. The difference is the binary is a different name. However, I've been told that the binary will work and the existing tool chain will work for QB64 PE edition, even if you rename the binary. And I ran into an issue where I wanted to do that because I had some old stuff laying around, and I did something different. I just created a symlink to the binary instead. Anyway, doesn't matter. But you can see this is where you download the QB64 Phoenix edition. And as you can see, the version numbers are a little bit different. This is, I think, a breath of fresh air because they're saying, hey, we're skipping generations here. And it looks like they're using SEMVer or semantic versioning. So, major versions, minor versions, and so on. And as features are added, you'll see them show up in change logs, typical software development stuff. So now that we've downloaded VS Code and QB64 and installed both of them, let's go through VS Code in a 101 kind of setup, wherein there's no assumption about anything, any pre-existing knowledge, and so on. So VS Code And hang on, I'll just open it here real quick. I have a, actually I have it here, sorry. And I'll show you how all of this stuff works. It's a text editor as well as, and I'm sorry, I need to pull the mind map up over here and follow along. Right, so it's a text editor, but it's so much more in that it's, you have Visual Studio, which is, this big, robust IDE, and it's industry standard, commercial, enterprise ready, enterprise grade. And then VS Code is kind of like a more community driven kind of, just as capable almost as, these other bigger packages that are either community edition Visual Studio or the commercial version compilers and whatnot. The difference is this is more of just a text editor that has the ability to use other stuff, and it has an ecosystem of extensions. And the extension language behind the scenes is TypeScript. So what you're seeing here is the editor, and this is an Electron based application, which is a JavaScript built thing. Don't worry about that. It's not slow. It's amazing. It's super fast. Excuse me. So VS Code text editor, right? You can see here's our text right here, and I'll zoom in a bit with Control and plus. Maybe I'll go out one, right? So you have your typical programming here. You have this little navigator here. You have your outline panel, which you might have use for to quickly jump around. And I'll open something more complicated here. This is just something I was experimenting with previously. QBasic ports. Here we go. Yeah, I like this one. Gorillas was my jam in QBasic, but here's an example where QBasic was ported into QB64. But anyway, the point I'm making here is this is a good way to navigate, and you can see, I can just jump to getNum function right here, and everything's cool. Also, you get these nice little, breadcrumbs and so on. It's really, really, really nice. So you got the text editor. The thing about the text editor too is it's an evolved text editor. So I would say it's on a similar vein of bleeding edge and contemporary features as like Vim or Emacs, wherein there are functions that assist you very, very well. Like for instance, multi-caret mode. So let's say we wanted to refactor this getNum, so we could just highlight it, double click it, hit Control D, and we can find everywhere it's in use. And now we have a multi-caret selection. And if we start typing, it's going to change them all at once versus having to type, move. Anyway, I'll go through some basic advantages and stuff like that, maybe in another video. So from the perspective of the ecosystem, this is the main program. Then there are extensions, as I mentioned. The main program has two branches. There's the insiders build, which is more bleeding edge. And then there's also the stable branch. And typically just use the stable one. You don't need to worry about the insiders, especially if you're new to it. But if you want to have a window into more features in the future that are coming and have an opportunity to test and have a say about them, the insiders track is a good one. Now, over here we have this side rail. In the side rail, you have, by default, you have the Explorer pane right here, which is also called the Workspace. And then you have a search where you can find and replace and do stuff. So let's look for const just for this example. Now, in this case, and I'll go through this later, we're looking at whatever is inside of here. And this is an explicit opt-in wherein we've added folders to it, or we've opened folders, and we have a multi-folder workspace here. So if I minimize, you can see I have this directory at the root, and this is one folder that's open. Then I also have this one, and this is my complementary library that I'm working on that is outside of this one, which is just like my experimental playground. So I've got both those open. This is a workspace. Workspaces are very handy, and I'll explain that in a bit more detail later. But basically, you have the ability to search files, and then you can do really cool things with regular expressions right here. It's just very, very good experience, and so on. Then you also have built-in source control. In this case, I'm using Git, and I've got both of my source control repos showing up in here. I had to do nothing besides add these folders to my workspace, and it automatically finds them as repos, and we can see and do many things with Git right there. Very, very cool. Then we have the debugger. Now here is an example where we need to talk for a second. So as I mentioned, the QB64 package on every operating system includes an IDE, and it includes a debugger. And it includes a whole bunch of other really cool, nice features like an ASCII chart, linting, and so on to help you, navigate your code and whatnot. You can step through, just like a regular debugger, step through your code, set watches and whatnot. The VSCode extension at this time does not have a debugger like that. It is available in VSCode if you write a language server or if you integrate with another debugger system. Now, our good friend Durus is working on that right now. He's got another project in the wings, but it's just a fledgling project right now. It's in its very, very early life cycle, and it's not available or anything like that. That said, there is a hotkey shortcut. You can Alt Q in your Visual Studio Code, and it will open your QB64 IDE with the file that you were editing in VS Code. That's rad, because now we have one hotkey away from a debug. There's a few caveats to that, and we'll go over those maybe in a bit. This is where the extensions are. So this little building block thing, this is the extensions. Now, in my case, you're going to see I have a very Spartan selection of extensions. And the reason for this is because, in my experience, it's better to have specific language profiles in VS Code versus having like a dog's breakfast kitchen sink of all languages ever, and have all of these extensions doing stuff, linting and running and all this. It can be a mess. So instead, what I've done is I've created a profile, and I'll go through that in a second. But TLDR, this is where the extensions are, and everywhere there's this 3-dot menu, this is indicative of a pop-out, and you can just click on it, and then you can do things. And this is the one right here, guys. This is the one that we're going to be using to install the extension that isn't on the marketplace. Okay, the last thing here is a GitHub login. This is because I've got an extension called GitHub pull requests and issues enabled. That's just a preference I have. It's a nice extension. I can go through this in more detail as needed, but that's kind of like the anatomy of the basic bar there. And then down here you have, and this is completely optional. I want to make sure you understand this. You don't have to do anything with this. But if you want to do special things like sign in and use github.com or other things like a Jira extension, maybe for work or something, then you will have the ability to do settings sync and then enable some other things like automatically logging you into different things that way. But you don't need to. You can just use SSH keys for your GitHub repo. You can use username and password, completely optional. This is the settings for the primary kind of setup of the immediate stuff you're going to need. So there's more to this program than meets the eye. And what I mean by that is a lot of this is hotkey oriented. So if you look at this settings menu and you choose command palette, this thing pops up in the top center. And this pattern is really, really useful because it has this fuzzy matching. So let's say we want to do something with QB64. So we type QB. Look at that. Now we can see QB64, and you can see all of the things that the extensions offers us. You can see the hotkey it's bound to, and so on. So that's the command bar or command palette, and that's Control-Shift-P. Don't forget that one. And then there's also Control-P, which will let you navigate very quickly in your workspace. So let's say I want to do something with my ANSI library. I can just start typing ANSI, and it will just find things that are relevant to it. So you can see with the QB64 icon, the BI file, that's the header for my library, and so on. Then you also have settings. In the settings, there's quite a lot to this. We're going to unpack this a little bit later. But TLDR, the settings are amazingly GUI oriented. They also have the ability to be edited in JSON. And JSON, if you don't know what that is, it's a little bit out of scope for this video. But basically what you need to understand is this is just a text file behind the scenes, okay? So, right, let's see. Then we have the ability to do, see our keyboard shortcuts all in one spot. And let's say you wanted to find, I don't know, markdown things. So you type markdown and everything related shows up. Really, really cool. Right, so I'm going to stop going through all of these things right now. I'll go through this real quick. Workspace trust, this is a thing where you're going to let things happen on your behalf while you're in VS Code for extensions and stuff. So in this case, you can see I've got some trusted folders and workspaces. These are just my preferences in C Basic. That is where I've installed my QB64 compiler. Excuse me. And I've also added my QB64 VS Code workspace and so on. So I'll explain how this works, but TLDR, know that the program is very safe to use. Nothing behind your back is going to happen unless you say it can. And then we have a status bar. This is the Git branch and so on. So if we look at, let's say, our gorilla.base file, and you'll see down here, we can see what column and row we're on. We can see how we're handling tabs and so on. And if you click these things, it will pop up a menu that you can action typically up here. Like here's an example where the language mode is QB64 and so on. So that is a very, very brief flyby of this entire program. Over here, you have an outline. There's more to it, guys. There's so much to unpack here, but just know that it's super friendly and super easy to use. Down here, before we move away, I will stop after this, I promise. This is the terminal. And this terminal is a tabbed-oriented terminal. So I'm going to delete these. It doesn't delete anything on your computer. You can use Control and the backtick character or tilde to open the terminal. And here you can see we're already in Git QB64, which is where this file exists. And it's one of where I have my workspace set up for. So anywho, that's a thing. And then you can change different shells. So I have a lot of different options here because I have WSL installed, Git Bash, and so on, and a lot of different flavors of Linux for subsystem for Windows. But you might not have that, and that's fine. PowerShell or CMD is just fine. Then we have an output tab up here. And here is something that I want to talk about before too long. We have these various different logging sections and output windows. And this is something that Durus set up so that he could make the code do what we want it to do out here. This you don't have to look at all unless you're doing something like linting, and then the program will automatically, like if I do Control-Shift-P and I do lint, right, you're going to see, hopefully, things will happen in here. Or maybe it's not. Oh, no, there we go, right? So the linter found that there's an unused variable. And yep, so right here, we've got our compilation occurring and the lint found those things. That's pretty good. That's not too bad. But anyway, this kind of thing can automatically be brought into focus. But know that these things are only for behind the scenes kind of stuff. If you're interested to understand how it works, no problem. But just know that you don't need to worry about that part. And the problems, I don't think we have anything in our extension to handle that yet. I could be wrong. Okay, that's the gist. Remember, you can always just click things and experiment. Everything you do can be reset. And let me show you just how that works real quick. So I'm going to exit my VS Code here. And I want to show you how you can create your own safe spot in VS Code. So as I mentioned, VS Code is available everywhere. So if you just type code, once it's installed, we're going to open it. And this is our system level version of VS Code. Now you can see it looks completely different. It's purple instead of blue. And that theme is something that I set up in my workspace in my profile. But this is my system level version. And so what you can see here, first of all, is I have a lot of mess to clean up. But this is why you want to start to look at profiles, because look at all of these extensions. Now, in this case, in my defense, I do work in tech for a living, and I work on the cloud and in AWS, and I do DevOps. So we have a lot of stuff in our ecosystem, our tool chain is vast. So just know that that's not going to be the case necessarily for you guys. But if you type code help, you're going to see there's options here that you can read about and so on. But the main one that I want to show you is user data and also extensions dir. So if you go code -- user data, what was it? User data dir, and we put it into C, VSCode, new thing, new profile. I'm just going to pick some. I have a VSCode directory on my computer where I store my profiles. I'm going to put extensions dir, or is it extension? I don't remember. Extensions dir. And that's going to be, actually, I want to prefix this with user data, and I'm going to do VSCode, new profile, extensions. And then from here, when I do this and I hit enter, watch what happens. We get a brand new, completely empty VS Code. That is awesome. Now, these here, popular, all that, ignore all that. Installed is what we're looking at. We got a perfectly clean initialized state for VS Code. So I wanted to make sure that you guys could understand that, hey, you're safe to experiment. It's safe to fail, safe to break. You can always create a new profile. In the same way, I have a QB64 one set up, and this is just how I like to do it. You don't have to do it this way. And I've got a shortcut created in Windows and all that. So I don't have to type that every time. But yeah, you can see we're right back to where we were. All right, we went through a ton of stuff there, but know that it's a really cool ecosystem. There's so many great things that you can do with it beyond just QB64. So just make sure you take a second and really absorb into the ecosystem and see what else might pique your interest, because you could set this up for a C programming project or whatever you want. Okay, one more thing before we move out of the VS Code 101 subject. I didn't cover all the different settings files. Let me do that real quick, just for your benefit. So when you are looking at your VS Code, you're going to see that there's this directory. Whenever you do something, it may pop up. Don't worry about it. You can add it to your .gitignore if you don't want it going into your repo or whatever. But within your VS Code, you're going to see several files like this. There can be others. I don't know if this is an exhaustive list, but this is just what I've encountered so far. So the first one here that we'll look at is the extensions. And this is something that you can maintain on your own. So if you have a collection of extensions that you find in the marketplace, like let's say we go over here and we're going to look at, I don't know, how about Markdown something, right? So Markdown all-in-one. I might want this and I might want to remember about it. So I can right click on it and choose add to workspace recommendations. And it's going to, in this case, ask me which folder. So I'm going to choose this one and click OK. But now if I go into that file, you'll see it added it right at the bottom. And again, this is all JSON. This is all JSON. There's nothing else that you have to worry about besides JSON in these files. Now, in this case, this is just like what the extension is and whatnot. That's all that is. And when you add to this and you open this project, this folder for the first time, it will ask you, do you want to install the extensions that are recommended? As well as you'll see in the extension section, let me go ahead and clear this out. And you can do that also by clicking this to clear. You can choose recommended. And then in this case, it's not my stuff. I thought it would be. So TIL. Anyway, that's actually, wait a minute. It might not be showing because actually I think I know why. So now if I do this, maybe, and is it still 6? Okay, it didn't pick that up. Okay, that's fine. Right. Okay, so that's what extensions.json is for. And then you also have a launch.json. Now you can see this one's grayed out, and this means it's part of my gitignore. And the reason for that is because when we were building this extension, Durus and others were making changes that we had to accommodate inside of this file, and it kept getting clobbered. And as I was learning, I learned quite a bit about VS Code by proxy of just helping with that extension. But as I was learning, I realized that, okay, this is probably something that I want to stay the same. But I'm not going to go through this whole format, but just know that there's find and replace templating, wherein you have variables and namespaces. So in this case, $config : QB64 dot is everything that the extension provides from that perspective. So if we do foo, it's not going to like it because foo isn't a thing. But if I do config QB64 dot and I hit, oh, it should have worked. Maybe because it's a thing that it doesn't like. Hold on. There we go. So you can see in this case, it's found the compiler path. So there might be more to it. I'm not sure, but just know that it's fun to experiment here and do your own things as well. This is just one specific thing, and this integrates with the F5 to launch the debug system, which is here, right? So you can see QB64 build and run, and if I hit the gear, it's going to open launch.json in my workspace. Cool. Okay. So the next one is settings.json, and this is specific to everything below, I guess, this directory or at a sibling level of this directory. So how it works is there's different scopes of configuration. There's the program level, which is like registry and or your main user profile data. If you don't use -- user data to launch stuff, it's just going to be the default one. Then there's settings there. And then on top of that, there are, if you have a workspace, and that is like what you have configured over in the Explorer here, where you have folders added and whatnot, any .VSCode files here, the settings are going to apply from this folder onward. That's why this looks kind of like a little bookmark thingy. It's trying to symbolize that this isn't a regular folder. This is a topmost root entry, a root folder in your Explorer workspace. And these settings are going to apply sort of like an htaccess inheritance model. Okay, so now if we click on tasks.json, this is also a different thing that you can do, wherein you can develop like little macros and things like that. You can get to task from going to terminal and run task. And then you can see here, we can do a clean QB64. And in this case, this batch is an admin tool. Okay, yep, that's fine. So it's cleaning the QB64 folder. There's a batch file it's running. And you can see that we have different, operating systems that are called out here. And that's what I was mentioning about with VS Code. It's very compatible with cross-platform development. And it's super niche for retro computing as well. Like you can do really cool stuff with this. So anyway, you can see it's going to run clean.sh on Linux or clean.bat on Windows. So in this case, both of them are going to run from that directory, right? Okay, cool. And then I'm not going to go into detail about that, but it just cleaned up all of these things and now we're good. So if we try to compile Gorillas here, I hit F5 to do this. I just want to show you, it might take a little longer because it has to build a bunch of stuff. So here's our Gorillas and look at that. QB64 is handling a QB 1.1 for DOS program. Name of player 1 is going to be QB64 rules. And we're just going to hit enter. How many points? Sure. Yep. Right. There you go. So you can see right there how that could happen. You could also have a terminal task. Let's say you're building something and you have a tool that you want to run. Like let's say, I don't know, maybe it's a key scan code thing or whatever, and you want it to show up as a task, then you would just add another entry in here. This is an array in JSON. So you would just add another thing down here, right? So you go comma, brace, and then here you would just put in like command and then whatever you want. The point is this can show up for you right in there and you can have it all and have your cake and eat it too. Okay. The other thing that I want to show you is that there are .code workspace files. Now, in this case, this one's crazy complicated, but it's because I made a lot of customizations to the editor where it looks like old school QBasic style DOS style. And I'm happy to share all of these things with y'all, but just know that that's how I set it up. Now, it's important to understand that every setting that you can have in settings.json here can also exist in a .code-workspace. So, and then I'm I don't remember the exact interpretation order if the code-workspace clobbers the .VSCode or vice versa. But if an extension exists in both spots, or I'm sorry, if a configuration exists in both spots, I think that there will be some kind of hierarchical evaluation of which actually it's applied in an inheritance model. Anyway, point is, you can have this self-contained. So now, like, this is beautiful because now if I'm using another language, like let's say I'm using Commodore, okay? So I'll close this real quick and let me just do this for I think I have a Commodore one here. Hold on. VS64 basic. Let's see if I've got this set up with any colors or anything. Okay, so I had it in the main config, but what I did is I changed my font to be the Petsky font and so on. I have a different extension installed here. You can see this is XC basic to get the syntax highlighting. Point I'm making is you can have like this experience where it's as native as you want it to be, so it can look less jarring than maybe, that black thing that you saw there, and maybe you want it to look blue. Anyway, you can figure that out on your own, but that's also important to understand this VS Code workspace. All right, that's VS Code 101. The help system is fantastic. Just use help. There's so much support for VS Code everywhere. Just look online if you need any assistance there. Now let's talk about QB64 on a 101 level. So as I mentioned, QB64 is the QBasic 4.5, and future modern versions of the similar dialect of a compiler and IDE. So the compatibility exists for QBasic, as we saw with Gorillas from 1.1 ported forward, and it also exists for QB 4.5. I believe it's also compatible with some things for Visual Basic, for DOS, 4.x, and PDS, or I don't know, a bunch of those things. You can find out more on the sites. But just know that the spirit and the reason this product existed, or this, I guess, language extension existed, is because the original developer just wanted to have QBasic stuff in a modern way. So QB64 comes with the IDE, which includes the editing, the debugger, and online help. And the thing that I was mentioning is you can complement your QB64 VS Code work with this debugger by using Alt-Q. So let's do that real quick. Let's go in here, and this is going to be apropos for a couple reasons, but I'm going to hit Alt-Q. Well, first, let me show you what this code does. It's just a work in progress. Ignore it, but it's showing you that it's compiling here. It's over in this other window. So now I was working on building poster frames for my YouTube channel in QB64 because right now I use a program called Affinity Designer, and it's kind of a pain. So I'd rather do like image as code, poster frame it as code. And I was working on, some fading. So here you can see I've got a font that was custom and that star background. So if I hit Alt-Q now, and let's say I want to figure out why it's white instead of fading to a different color. Well, now I'm in this QB64 proper, and I want to debug it. So the first thing I'm going to do is find out where my fading happens. Okay, so it's fade out here, and it's the fade out sub, which is here, and you can get to that obviously through your traditional, way that you might hear and so on. I prefer to have everything on and visible at once, just my preference. Anyway, so we're going to see, okay, it's 2-color. That's a long, and this is my code, but I forgot how it worked. Pretend. I just worked on it last night, but anyway. So I'm passing 2-color, 2%, and speed. So here we have fade out. Oh, it's doing to white. Okay, well, let's say we didn't realize that. We're going to set a breakpoint here. Now, as soon as I click on that gutter in that line number, it says insert debug meta command. Yes. And what that's going to do is at the top of our code, it adds debug. This is QB64 IDE specific stuff. This is not relevant for VS Code at this time. So now if I hit F5 and I've set this breakpoint, I'm going to hit F5 and let it do things to create the file. All right. And this is exactly what I wanted you guys to see. It has invalid handle on line 32. And if we look at line 32, that's where it's trying to do a load image. So we don't want to continue. And this is what I was getting at. And this is why I wanted this to be seen. Let me just make sure I can zoom into this in a way that you can see it better. I'm going to use a magnifier called Glass Brick that I just really love for this purpose. Whoa, it's a little bit fast. So right here, you can see how I have, okay, I don't know why that's doing that. That's goofy. Anyway, let's try the Windows magnifier then. Let's try that one. Okay, that's a little better. I don't know what you're going to be seeing on the stream, but anywho, you can see a relative path here. And this works in my VS Code, no problem, but it doesn't work here. So what I'm going to do to work around this, and it's just kind of like an unfortunate way that works, I'm going to do a chdir. I think let's go out of the magnifier for a minute. Is it that? No, it's a regular command, chdir. And then here, I'm going to do, okay, that's okay. And I'm going to do the path to where I've got my stuff. So that's going to be my Git folder, QB64, and then image, I think it's images. Let's see, in our QB64 graphics. Okay. Graphics. That's the path that I want this to run from. Now that relative path should work. So if I hit F5 now, there we go. Yep. It got it. It found the image now. Okay, but now I've set that breakpoint. So I'm in a sleep right now. You can see the cursor here. It's grayed out, but you can see the cursor here. Now I'm going to make the, I'm going to just leave it how it is. But we're here. This is where we are in the execution in the debugger. So I hit space. And now since we set that breakpoint, I'm here, right? So this is something that does not exist in the VS Code extension that you will find invaluable. Now you can do all kinds of good stuff for this. F4 is how you set watches and whatnot. So I'll just do one on, let's see what's relevant here. Old. Let's just do old and hit escape. And you can see it's a number. As long as it's not -1, I think it's going to be a valid handle. So, yep, I'm in this code now. I can simply press F5 to continue execution. And if I go back to my window here, it's on the other screen. I can hit space again. I thought, let's see, F5. There we go, F7. So here it's faded out to that 25%, white, and it faded back in. Anyway, point I'm making is that is how you complement your VS Code with the actual IDE debugger. Okay, that out of the way, if you make changes in that editor and you save them, I didn't save them, but if you do, it will show up in your VS Code. So you have that symbiotic relationship. If you think you're going to be doing debugging, you might want to chdir wherever you're doing stuff or use absolute paths here. So we've talked about the editor, debugger, and online help a little bit. We didn't really go through that, but just know that that's F1 on any of the keywords and it will pop up in line help. The compiler we talked about a bit. So that's QB64 on its own. Now, we talked about preparing for our QB64, and let's do that. So we're going to create, now I'm not going to do it at the system level like I talked about in the previous part of it. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to collaborate. I'm going to use a profile. So let's do this from scratch. So this is Windows Terminal, but you could use command, prompt, whatever. You can get Windows Terminal from the Windows Store. It's really good if you have a modern Windows. So I'm going to go to VS Code on my disk, and you're going to see a bunch of directories in here. Now, these are my profile areas, and I'm just playing with it and doing stuff here. But remember, it's just code. I'm going to use up arrow and not have to type that. It's code, user data dir. And then here you will pass in whatever it is you want here. So I'm going to do QB64 YouTube and QB64 YouTube. And then, yeah, that's it. So now when I hit enter, it's going to create a brand new profile. I'm going to see this open in another window here. And this is brand new VS Code. Everything is, there's no settings of any kind. And we're straight out of the gate. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to get our VS Code extension from GitHub, and we've already got it. So if we look at type, I guess, .git, Isn't that a thing? Is there no Git? Okay. Type config. Okay, so this is the URL, right, that we've cloned, and we're already up to date. But anyway, I just wanted to show that. And then 0.8.3 VisX is the newest version, and that's what we're going to install. So we're going to go back to our VS Code, and we're going to go and click on extensions. And then from here, we're going to go to the 3 dots menu, and I'm actually going to put on, actually, wait, let me do it natively. The Zoom native is Control equals or Control minus, especially for us oldies. Okay, install from VSX, click extensions, click the 3 dots, install from VSX. Now here, I'm going to go to my Git, where I've cloned the repo, and there it is, 0.8.3. And if you look in here, there's also 0.8.6. So this VS Code 0.8.3 is the more stable one, but we're going to go with this one because we know what we're doing. So we're going to click install, and at this time it's finished. And if we go here, we can see, okay, here's everything about the extension. Great. Now, there's in every extension, there's common things. You'll get a version, you'll get the name of the user or namespace, you'll get the extension version, a picture, a description, and then you'll get a couple buttons. These buttons will vary based on the state of the extension. In this case, it says this extension is enabled globally. That's fine because we have a profile set up that is only for QB64-YouTube. So if I go and I click the gear menu, I can get copy extension ID and extension settings. So that's nice. If you click on, which one is it? If you click on it, I think maybe they changed this. I thought I could click on somewhere to open it, but maybe not. I guess if you just do copy, it will take you to the website of where that is hosted. But okay, yeah, right. Because this isn't in the marketplace, that feature is not going to be available. Then you have tabs down here. You can scroll through these and see what's going on. You can see all kinds of documentation. You can see like how to build it. In this case, we didn't build it from scratch. The extension is installed from the VSIX package. But if you were interested in that, you could. Then if you click on feature contributions, and this is global to all VS Code extensions, you can see that there are settings that are available, and it explains what the setting ID is. This is the JSON that you would use in your settings file. And you can see that there are descriptions for each setting. There's commands that have been added as an extension to VS Code, and those are all here and documented there. And there's a language that has been added. It supports grammar as well as snippets. And there's a debugger, but it's not the debugger that you think. It's just for hitting F5 and compiling the code. There's also a show ASCII chart thing. If you look at the changelog, you can see Durus is maintaining what he changes throughout each version. And yep, so, right. So on our Discord, in the QB64 official Discord, we have a VS Code channel that you can go in if you have problems, if you want to report them that way, or you can report an issue in GitHub. Okay, cool. So right here, you can see at a glance what this thing can do. And this is a pretty good flyby, but I'm going to go a little bit more in the weeds. First thing that we're going to do, though, is we're going to go to the gear menu here and choose extension settings. And from here, you're going to see this is that, GUI-based configuration. So if you look here, we have a format mode, install path is blank. That needs to happen. We need to put something there. The rest are just Boolean toggles. So let's put our path. So C basic QB64. Now, you don't want to put in bin or anything like that. You want it to be the directory where your QB64 lives. And let's just confirm that in my shell. If I go to my basic directory, I'm going to see a bunch of stuff. Right, so QB64, and yep, there it is. This is my stuff. I've got a whole bunch of crap in here. Ignore it. But basically, just know that this is where I've installed my QB64. And you put the path to it, the folder, directory, whatever you want to call it, to it, and that's it. So all of these defaults are pretty good. I'll walk through them briefly. The format mode, you can choose between lower, upper, and mixed. And this is similar to the IDE, where you have those same options. the is create back file enabled. This is when you save files if it creates back files, and also is a git ignore enabled. What this does is it complements this setting and it prevents back files from going into your Git repos. Is current row highlighting enabled? This does exactly what it says. Is format enabled? This is by default off because not everybody likes that. And then you have other stuff. Is format meta commands, mixed case enabled, hover text, and so on. Now I'm going to enable hover text. I like that one. And I think that's it. I don't want this. It's just preference. So let me just start showing you things, but basically walk through this. It's self-explanatory. Some of these are going to require a little more explanation than others. So hover text, let's go there first. So right now, if we click on our workspace here, no folder is opened. We can open a folder or we can clone a repo. So let's go ahead and open a folder, and I will open, let's just go and create a new folder just for the sake of argument here. I'm going to call it QB64 YouTube. Okay. Now that folder is open. Now this is why I was talking about that trust stuff. So we've opened a folder and it says, do you trust the authors of the files in this folder? Code provides features, blah, 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 that may automatically execute. Yes. So because I've done this and I know I'm not going to do for parent of desktop, but yes, I trust the authors of this folder because it's completely blank. Now my extension is still here. The folder is not coupled to the extension. That's coupled to the profile. So now if I create a file here, right click in here, and I can choose new file, I will go ahead and call this test.bas. And no, I'm not. Now we have a QB64 language open, and we're just going to do the most basic thing, print hello world, right? So you can see we get syntax highlighting and we can see what's going on there. Now I enabled that hover thing. If I hover over this, you can see we have inline documentation. You can use the mouse wheel to scroll through this and so on. You can also do F1 on any keyword and it will open a markdown file right in your browser. Now, if you want this to be open at the same time as editing, you can just drag from the toolbar or the tab bar and it will be right here on the side. So now we can see our documentation inline and we can see our hover text right here. So let's do F5 at this time, and you're going to see it launches a PowerShell. That's the default shell in VS Code by default, as I just said twice. So here's our hello world, pressing key to continue. Bam, that's it. Now, there's a bunch more stuff that we can cover, but that's the gist of the real basics. One more thing before we move off this topic, you can create a shortcut to do the same things that we were doing in our command line. So let's go ahead and do that in our folder. So we have that folder on our desktop. I'm just going to open an Explorer here, go to my desktop, and pardon the mess. I'm going to go to my QB64 YouTube directory, and here you go. Here's a VS Code folder, and inside of here, there are the files that we were talking about. We'll go through those in a moment. Here's a git ignore, our test base file, and our test.exe file. All of these things are normal for what we're doing. Now I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose new. I'm going to do shortcut. And from here, we're going to type in code and next. And name is going to be QB64 VS Code next. Now I have a shortcut right here. Let's see what happens with it if I double click it. Okay, this is my system level VS Code. They can be open side by side with my other one, but now I want to go and right click and choose properties, and I want to change some of the things in here. So let's make it bigger. Right, so it's going to start in. This is where my VS Code starts in. Now I don't want it to start in there though. I want it to go in my desktop backslash QB64 YouTube directory. That's just how I want it to start. And I want it to run maximized, and the target, this is where I want to put in my command line options for user data dir and extensions dir. So I'm going to do user data dir, and I'm going to do C VS Code, QB64, what was it? QB64 YouTube, I think. Let's just verify that real quick. Sorry, let me zoom out. Did-a-bop. Where? Just a moment. There it is. QB64 YouTube. Okay. Right? Okay, so QB64 YouTube /user data and -- extensions dir. Right? Is that right? Sorry. Yeah, it's an S. Oh boy, this magnifier, man. Okay, extensions dir is going to be C VSCode QB64 YouTube extensions. Right. So now what this will do is it'll start here and it will hopefully open our profile. So now if I hit apply, everything should be good. I can even change the icon here and I can find the QB64 icon through the executable, I believe. Yep, there it is. So pop, apply. Okay, so now let's get out of the maximization and let's go ahead and close this and let's use our shortcut. So there you have it. Everything is back how we expected it to be. We also have this QB64 extension installed and we're ready to go, separate from everything else on our computer. You're ready to get going. Let me walk through what happened here and what was created just real quick. Extension has been modified on disk. Okay, fine. All right, so we have the launch JSON. Now this is going to look different. I'm going to put this over here again. You can move these freely between these panes. You can also change the layout. Just use these menus, editor layouts, 3 panes, columns, and so on. Just use the program. You'll get used to it. Okay, so here's the launch JSON that the extension created. So in this case, it put it into my install path. And since I'm on Windows, we don't need to specify if we're on Linux or OS X. This is what it's going to do. So it's going to compile. It's going to create the output file. It's going to compile in a batch mode. I think that's what X means. Or no, X means execute. And then, yeah, then it's going to run it. That's all it does. And then the other operating systems are down here. So that's launch JSON. Then you also have settings JSON. Why is this? What's the problem with that? Property must be double quoted. Okay, that's missing a quote. Durus FYI line 8 settings.json, excuse me, by default is missing a quote. Right, so here you can see the other settings that it's set up. I'm going to save that. And then the tasks, which includes the what is this doing? Building and cleaning, right? So there you go. Now, let's go ahead and do Control-Shift-P or this command palette, then QB64, and let's see what else we got. So we got help, which we can get to from here, F1. We've also got help alphabetical. Okay, so if we open that, okay, this is just like the wiki, and you can see alphabetical list of things in the language. This is going to be really handy. I'm going to put that right on the side. Now I kind of want this to go down further. So what I'm going to do is click on this guy and I'm going to do a, let's see, I want it on the left, right? And then, or is it justify? Hold on. Let me think. Oh, actually, I don't think I can do it that way. But what I was hoping to do was to get this to extend down there, but maybe that's not possible. Okay, but I do want to see the secondary sidebar, even though there's nothing here. And I'm also going to reset my zoom level by using Control and numpad 0. Okay, now I have some pretty cool stuff. So let's say I have a sub and it's stuff and sub. Okay, and it's going to say print stuff. That's my sub. So now if I have the sidebar open, but there's nothing over here. That's strange. Well, what you can do is grab your outline. And this is what I had in my other thing. Now I have a really quick way to bounce to my sub or my stuff sub. So if I had multiples, let's say I had 10 versions of this and they were all over my code, then I could really quickly bounce between them. I'm going to hold Shift Alt and use the down arrow and I'll be able to duplicate this code several times. And then if I just want to, you know, put some space in between them, whatever, right? I can do that. But now you can see for every time I had a sub, it showed up in there. If you have arguments in your sub, I as integer, right? Integer, it will show up, it should show up. Maybe not. Maybe that changed. Oh, it might just be cut off. No, I don't know what's going on there, but make sure you put a space after your parens in your functions and stuff. All right, well, anyway, ignore that. Point I'm making is now we have an outliner and everything here. So, yep, and then here's our shortcut. We're not going to look at this, but this is the Windows shortcut. So now what you could do is create a new Git repo and push all of this stuff right in there. Let's look at the git ignore real quick. So one of the things that is going to happen is there's going to be binary files, that are going to be part of the creation and work of your stuff with QB64. So you can see the git ignore has a bunch of stuff in it, including exe. So this won't ever get committed once it's a git ignore. But on other platforms like Mac and Linux, which don't have file extensions, we added a thing where it's going to ignore anything without a file extension, and then it's going to add directories back in. Just be mindful that that's how that works for those other platforms. All right, we've got a shortcut created and we've got our profile set up. We've installed the extension. Again, you can get that from GitHub right here. You install through the extension directory, or I'm sorry, the extension pane in the 3-dot menu, and you install as a VSX. And in terms of configuring the extension, you use the gear icon in the extensions section, and then you can walk through and look at all the help for all of those. I've just called them out here. The ones that I disable typically are current row highlighted, because in my own theme I do that. And format I turn off as well, because I like to do things in my own way. I also turn off the RGB color. That's just a personal preference for me. So yeah, that's kind of it for that. And then I think that's it. I think we've reached the end. Okay, I have my other profile loaded here. I'm going to hit Control and numpad 0 to reset the zoom level. You can also do View, Appearance, Reset Zoom that way, and you can see what the hotkeys are and everything. But what I wanted to do was show you how you can set up a multiple folder workspace real quick. So I'm going to go and close these folders. So to do that, I'm going to right click and choose Remove Folder from Workspace and Remove Folder from Workspace. So now you might be thinking, well, you've removed the folders. What's going on? Why don't we see anything changing? Because the workspace was technically removed. Well, the workspace is still open, right? So I'm going to close all my tabs. Now, if I go to File and I do Close Workspace, watch what happens. I promise you something good should happen. That's not what I expected. I expected it to close my workspace, and since all my settings are there, it would do that. Well, anyway, let me add a couple folders here. So you can do add a folder here, you can open folder, or you can just drag on what you want. So why don't we do that? Let's open up our Explorer here. We're going to hit Windows right arrow, and then it will let us keep it on the side. We're just going to drag in a folder. So we're going to drag in this one, and we can just do that. Adopt. Yes, I trust the authors. Okay. So now we have the QB64 folder in there. Now let's add, how about we add our QB64 installation directory. Okay. So we're going to go here, we're going to right click, and we're just going to drag it right onto here. And we're going to say add folder to workspace. So now you have multiples going on. So you have your QB64 compiler here. And why might you want that? Well, there's an internal directory with some temp files in here when you compile stuff. And sometimes the compiler will fail in an obtuse way, and you need to see the build log. And that's what behind the scenes all of this stuff is. Anyway, that's how you would create a workspace really quickly. Then you can go File, Save Workspace As, and then from here, you can go back to your desktop where you have your main folder, if I can click things. And where did I put it? Here it is. So we're going to call it QB64 YouTube Code Workspace. And we're going to hit back a couple times. And you can see now we have this file. So that's cool. So let's go ahead and close our VS Code. And let's close, make sure everything is closed. Okay, it is. So now we have a launcher. And it's going to open with this. Okay, you can see the format's different, obviously. But now if we open our workspace here, you can see this is a JSON file. And you can see all it did was add the folders at the top. So here's our compiler and here's our current directory. Now, if you want to make changes, like let's say you want a different color theme for your workspace, you can go to Settings, Color Theme, and then you can choose Browse Additional Color Themes. And let's just look for MS-DOS, I think it is, the one that I based mine on. Yep, so here it is. So you can click MS-DOS. And now, from here, if you look at your, where is it? Color customizations. So this installed that to the main profile directory one, not, so we're going to go to Preferences Settings, and I'm going to go into the JSON. Here's the color theme. So you can see this is in our VS Code QB64 YouTube user data user settings.json. But we want this to be, see when I took it out of there and saved it, it went back. We want this to be in our workspace instead. So put it in the settings right here, right at the top. And we're going to go ahead and get rid of that comma and do that and add a comma. So now we have it in our workspace here. But here's the thing. Adding this and changing it didn't do anything. Why is that? Well, that's because the workspace isn't open. So while we have that shortcut that launched, it remembered through the profile settings, we didn't launch the workspace. So let's go back here. Let's choose more options and then properties on our shortcut. And what we're going to do here, at the end of our target, we're going to put in the path to our workspace. So in this case, it's going to be admin, and then this. We already have a quote, so we're going to go desktop QB64. I think I did this. It doesn't matter, but good habits, right? And then this is going to be, what is it called? QB64-YouTube. I'm not typing all that. Just hit F2 on a file in Explorer and you'll rename it. And you'll be able to copy it to the clipboard. So there we go. I'm going to do that, and then bam. Or bam, sorry, not bomb. So now I've done that. All I did was after the existing arguments that we had in our shortcut is I added space, and that is going to open that workspace. So now if I remember how to use the magnifier, I'm going to hit apply, click OK, and I'm going to double click this. And you're going to see, yes, I trust the authors. You're going to see, I promise, I hope. It should have opened that, and it should have got the theme. I don't understand. This is unknown or not installed. Okay, so interesting. So let's go to this and go to color theme. And I don't understand why it's not installed. MS-DOS. That's what we want. Okay. Install. I guess you can't have it there? That's interesting. I guess that has to be at the profile level. Okay, well, well, that sucks. I thought that would do that, but anyway, oh, it's not open. Wait a minute, it's not open. Hold on, guys. Just a minute. It's not open. I guess we have to use a command line option. Let's see together. So we're going to do code help. All right, we can open diff, window, add folders, merge, user data profile. Oh, they added a profile support. Okay. I thought that would work. Let's try -A, maybe. I don't know. Or we could do, let's try this. Maybe this is even better. If we right click this, we can do open. Ah, that worked. Let's just make sure that our color theme, okay, I don't know, that worked. I guess that's one way you don't even need a shortcut. It says this workspace isn't open. This workspace is already open. Okay, weird. I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to cover that so you can now have as much fun as the rest of us. And let's see what this is. I don't know. What is it? Run the executable. Oh, right. These are just exe files. Well, anyway, that's another extension. If you click on these are installed because I'm in my global, because I didn't use my shortcut, right? So if I use this, I won't see that extension. Yes, I trust the authors. And then, yeah, so we only have these two. But if you choose to go here and you can choose, just type exe. This is handy on Windows. It's an exe runner, install that. And then what you can do is you don't have to recompile your code. Just right click on it and choose run executable and it'll open your window. And there you go. Anyway, that's a lot of stuff that we've covered. I know it's a lot, so I'm going to put in some jump markers in the video and hopefully this is helpful. Thanks for watching and I will talk to you later. If you like this series, feel free to subscribe. More will be coming. Hit a like, click the bell, all those things that you do on YouTube, and maybe we can see each other again in the future. Bye-bye.